It's the Underpowered Hour. On this week's show, Ike's back from Africa, and we talk about King Charles's Defenders for sale. The famous Vera Defender is on display. African game viewers, and would you like to subscribe to a new Land Rover? And now, here's the show. Welcome to the Underpowered Hour. I'm Steve Beres, mild-mannered television executive by day and Land Rover collector by night. You can find out more about our cars and what we're working on at theberescollection.com or follow us on Instagram at theberescollection. I'm joined, as always, by my good friend, Ike Goss.
Thank you to everyone joining us today.
I'm the vent flap to Steven's air conditioning. I am the oily breeze of podcasting, Ike Goss.
I own and operate Pangolin 4x4 in Springfield, Oregon, where we live and breathe Land Rovers. Check us out online on Facebook, Instagram at Pangolin 4x4. Let's get started.
All right, Ike. Well, after a protracted absence,
Sabbatical and a half.
Yeah, sabbatical and a half. Your ramen springer there out in the wilds of South Africa. Welcome back.
Thank you.
You're all in one piece. It seems that all of your digits and limbs and everything are in place. And
you're in no position to count, but I assure you that they are all present and accounted for.
That's fantastic. Unfortunately, we did lose Linus.
He was eaten by a honey badger.
Yeah, well, you know.
Which is funny because we camped next to this gentleman in a place called Sodwana Bay, and the campsites were kind of overgrown there.
Yeah.
And there's like a perimeter fence, and there's all these like security dudes like patrolling the perimeter fence because there are animals, but also people that want to get into the camp and like rifle through people's stuff.
Yeah.
And this guy, we just heard this shout in the middle of the night. We all jump up because like we think something's happening, and this man yells, "Get out!" And we think he's like having an argument with his wife, but it's a honey badger in his tent.
As we all well know, honey badgers don't give a shit, you know?
They do not. And that was quite the calamity for him.
Wow. But Linus befriended that honey badger and is now living among them. So
yeah, that's true.
Yeah. Oh, that's good. Well, hopefully all the best to him. So in the news, quite a bit of news this week, as you know, you'll have with an absence. Probably the top item this week is one of my favorite things, and that is Royal Land Rovers.
Oh, we knew you love those things.
You know, it is. I love pushing them into fancy car shows.
Nice.
I like riding around in them.
Nice.
I like, looking at them under tarps in the rain. I like it all. And this is a pretty significant one. In my opinion, this is King Charles's 2010 Land Rover Defender 90.
What makes it so special?
It's got a lot going for it. It's a Defender 90, my favorite of all of the sizes of Land Rovers, because they never made the 100-inch, but the 90 is the next best thing. It is a Puma, and unfortunately, 1 year newer, although it could still be a 2.4. It's not necessarily a 2.2. 2010 was a transition year, so it could be. And, of course, it was owned by none other than His Majesty, King Charles III. At the time, I imagine he owned he was probably still the Prince of Wales, but it nonetheless had royal buttocks placed upon its seat, which is cool.
It's pretty low mileage, 24,500 miles approximately.
Yeah, I don't know how much he drives, really. I imagine it was an estate car or something, right? Like they would drive it around the fox hunting or people hunting or whatever the king does.
I think my favorite part of this car, and this is not King Charles's Land Rover, this is Prince Charles's Land Rover, because this predates his kingship, if I'm not mistaken.
It does. They say it's King Charles, his Land Rover. I mean, and yes, technically that is true. But when he owned this car, he was a prince. This is just a princely car, not a kingly car.
Yeah. I think my favorite thing about this car is, unlike a lot of Royal Land Rovers, it does not have a bunch of fancy stuff on it. It has alloy wheels, but it is a van-sided hardtop. So it's a pretty basic model. So it doesn't have any interior trim in the back at all.
Nope. It is the standard Puma front, but it doesn't even have a cubby box. It's just got the little parcel sort of basket. It's got cloth seats. It's very much like the People's Land Rover just like Charles. It's
And
not very posh.
Do we know what color this is?
I don't know what color it is. It doesn't look like a super factory color, but it might be. It isn't claret, obviously, because it's not a ceremonial car, but it also doesn't look like it's the standard like Windsor green color that they have for the civilian vehicle. It doesn't look like the Queen's 110. It looks like a lighter green than that, right? Like it's a little more pastel than that.
Yeah, sort of a Keswick or something.
Something like that. Yeah, it's nice. It's a nice car. I think
it says it has luxury features such as heated seats and heated front and rear screens.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
I don't think it really has too many luxury features.
Are those luxurious? I mean, I guess heated seats are a little bit luxurious.
But they're cloth. They're not like leather or anything fancy, really.
No, they're cloth
pretty
seats.
Basic.
And of course, it is a 5-speed as well. It would be a 6-speed because it's a Puma, but it is no fancy automatic conversion or anything like that. It's sort of a bog standard van side, which is pretty cool. Now they're saying that it will start at 53,000. I imagine that's pounds. It has a dollar sign, but I imagine that's pounds. Which is, I mean, if you could get, first of all, any Puma, of that vintage in that category is worth, 20, 30 grand anyways. And, I guess there's a 20,000 pound Charles premium on that. I don't know if that's worth it, but there it is.
It's a low mileage car. It's pretty low.
And it looks like it's in really good shape and well taken care of. And again, royal buttocks have sat upon that driver's seat. So that's
I kind of feel like that might make it worth less.
It depends, I guess. It depends. Depends, on what you're into, I guess. You know, a big royalophile would definitely want this car, I think.
Well,
Anyways,
we'll see. We'll find out. It's up for auction.
If you're interested, over there on the Iconic Auctioneers site.com, you can see the car up there. Lots of great photos of it. And it's saying an estimate between 42 and 50,000 pounds. And the live auction is Saturday, the 22nd of March at 12 p.m. GMT. So
it's coming up.
Yeah. So go check it out. And hopefully somebody's interested in it. Maybe I'll pick that up for my UK car, the Chuck.
Doesn't come with a registration number. That is unfortunate.
Oh.
I was just reading that in the auction. The 72HRH registration, His Royal Highness. That does not come with the vehicle. So you have to. It says it may be available for a separate negotiation. So
holy smokes!
They're gonna bilk you for that.
72 HR. I just noticed that. You're right. His Royal Highness. Oh, that's pretty cool. Now, do you think that's what he had on the plate, or do you think that's what the current owner put on there?
I don't know.
Yeah, that's a good question.
I don't know.
It's a good question.
Hard to say, but I did find that interesting. An interesting note.
Interesting. Well, speaking of interesting new Defenders, there will be a Defender 130 coming out here with a V8 that will make up to 500 horsepower, which is a nice...
That's like it's long overdue. You'd think that the largest, heaviest model would be able to would have the largest engine standard.
You would think that, and it is big, it is heavy, and that's a pretty cool. It's a pretty cool upgrade because you do need, you can never hurt having a little more power in that guy because, the P400 is fine, but the the V8 is going to make, I think, a big difference to the old 130. I don't know. It's almost. I mean, that's 500 horsepower. That's just what 140-ish shy of the Octa. That's pretty good.
I mean, 500 horsepower is the new 200 horsepower.
That's true. It is. Everything's got to be 500 horsepower now. Come on.
When does it end? The automotive arms race.
It's true. I think there's the newest Bugatti, which is a hybrid vehicle, is now 1,020 horsepower.
Uh-huh.
That seems absurd. What are you going to do with 1,020 horsepower?
I mean, I guess you're just going to burn away your tires in 10 seconds.
I most of the time drive a 20 horsepower car, I think, so I feel like that extra 1,000, I don't even know.
I saw you putting down the street with a forklift.
Yeah, it's actually my forklift is now electric, so I don't know how much horsepower it has, but it actually goes pretty good on the road. I take down a Starbucks every now and then,
What kind of forklift is it? I think we talked about this on the show, didn't we?
We may have, but it is a Crown, all electric. It is actually a lift truck because it also can tow and lift. So it's got a little pintily kind of hook hitch thing on the back, the little forklift pin hitch thing. And it can not only lift I don't know what it is, thousands and thousands of pounds, but it can tow the same amount, which is kind of interesting.
You should trade it for like an electric ladder or whatever the fuck you traded the last one for.
I actually ended up giving that away. I sold it technically, but the guy, he came to pick it up, and as it turns out, he was the guy who installed my original lift at my old shop. And I was like, oh yeah, how come, I called the same company to move my lift from that space to the new space, to the current shop. And he didn't show up. Some other guys showed up. I didn't really think of anything of it at the time. And he's like, yeah, that was like my son-in-law. And he pushed me out of the company. So now I run my own service company. And I'm like, oh man, that's really shitty. Like, what a dick. And so I just gave him the lift. I said,
he just gave you a sob story and you folded, huh?
And I folded just like a lawn chair. But now he does the maintenance on my lift for free. So
that's nice.
There you go. Yeah, he just, I called him to come and do it, and I said I'd pay him, and he's like, no, I'll just do it. It's fine. So.
Oh, that's sweet of him.
Yeah, he's a nice guy. Really nice guy. But yeah, anyways.
It's a much better story than I anticipated.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah. So speaking of nice guys and shows that I'm not sure you watch this show, but I don't know a person in the UK that doesn't know the ITV show Vera, which apparently is ending.
Tell us,
which I didn't know
what happens in the show.
It's like a soap opera. It's like a British soap opera about this person, and she drives around the countryside in her 1996 Land Rover Defender 90. And the interesting thing about this is nothing. It is it's like a blue and white station wagon Defender 90. It's, just fine. It's got a little bit of a saggy front grille and some of that it's obviously been in the weather forever. It's heavily oxidized and things, but as it turns out now that the car is in sort of private hands or whatever, it's in a museum now. I'm not sure if it's the British Automotive History Museum or where it is, but anyways, a gentleman, Richard Usher, the founder of the Great British Car Journey, which I guess is a television show. I don't know. In fact, this car has an automatic transmission, possibly factory installed automatic transmission in a 96 Defender 90, which is really interesting. That was not a spec that was even remotely available. Worth maybe a conversation with Michael Bishop to see if that's the case. That would have been a factory one-off. I wonder I guess it would have potentially had one of the transmissions from the Discovery, right? A contemporary Discovery would have had an option, right?
The US Model 97 Defenders are all automatic.
That's right.
If it was factory installed, I have to think it's probably the same.
It would have been the same.
Same as that.
That would have been the same. That's a good point. I think technically, yeah, that's probably what it is. I like it. I think it's a very honest-looking Land Rover, and obviously very beloved in the show itself. It's obviously a pretty important character to the Vera franchise.
I've never seen it. Is it a good show?
Yeah, it's good. It's like it's your British, kind of show.
What does that even mean?
Yeah, I also like the Welsh soap opera Stella, which is also laden with Land Rovers and full of Game of Thrones cast members before they were on Game of Thrones. So,
that's fun.
Yeah. If you're ever on a British Airways flight, both Vera and the aforementioned Stella are available on demand on their in-seat entertainment system. So you can.
Yeah. According to this article, this is the holy grail of Land Rover, of television Land Rovers. Do you believe that?
I guess. Maybe.
Strong words.
It seems like that is a strong statement. I suppose in the UK, it probably is highly regarded. But I'm not sure if it quite has the same cachet worldwide versus maybe a James Bond car or something like that. But maybe, who knows? You know what? If the Vera Land Rover, I still tend to defer to the Shaun the Sheep Land Rover.
That's an abomination. It's like a Cronenberg Land Rover. Somebody needs to destroy that thing.
So, I had meant to purchase one and send it to you, but there is now a Matchbox car, or whatever. Maybe it's a UK version of Corgi or something. But the Shaun the Sheep car.
Don't buy me that.
You can immortalize that Shaun the Sheep.
Don't buy me that.
It's that thing is, it's really something. It's really something.
It sure is. I think it should have remained clay, in my opinion.
Should have just stayed in the clay realm. Well, speaking of unique Land Rovers that are heavily modified, but this, of course, in a more positive way, you've, of course, just been to the world capital, probably, of game viewer defenders.
Sure.
Of course, Africa, and their chop-top Land Rover game vehicles with stadium seating, literally like a piece of stadium seating. In the back
had no
there.
idea how seriously they take those things, and it's pretty interesting. Of the game reserves and lodges, both the national parks and the private ones, they all operate game viewers of various types and descriptions, and obviously watching wildlife is a huge deal. So these vehicles are like how it's basically commercialized. You hire a guide or what have you, and you track the animals. Sometimes they have that seat in the front, like on the fender.
Yeah.
A tracker will actually look for the animal prints, and they'll drive and find the animals, and you can watch
And that's the
them
purpose of
photograph
that
them.
front perch, is to sort of look on the ground for prints and things.
Yeah, and direct the driver and so forth, by what you can see on the ground. So there's correspondingly a big industry in converting the vehicles, bending all the tube frames for the seating and making the seats. And if you can think of a four-wheel drive vehicle, there's probably been a game viewer conversion on it. There's shops that specialize in Land Rover game viewers, and we visited one of them, and the guy services like all the private, game reserve viewing vehicles. And there was probably 30 or 40 of the game viewer vehicles, and he makes all the framework and so forth, and the shades and all that stuff for those cars.
Super cool. And what's the top engine over there? Like, have they moved any to the Puma, or is it TD5 kind of only? Or the Pumas, they can get parts and stuff and it's fine?
Yeah, I would say that we saw dozens and dozens and dozens of Puma vehicles.
Wow.
They sold a lot of those cars, and our Puma game viewers, there are, normal expedition outfitted Puma vehicles, some of which we drove. We actually drove on the trip. So
nice.
Absolutely. They're using Pumas. There's definitely some TD5 enthusiasts, and then, there's some older 300 TDI vehicles. But I would say most of the vehicles we saw were TD5s and Pumas for the classic Defenders, for sure.
Yeah. Cool.
But there were even some older classic V8s as well that we saw.
Oh, really? Oh, cool. Any series cars?
Yeah, we saw a number of series cars there. As many on the road. We saw some on the road, but I think we saw a long wheelbase Series 3. We had an 80-inch on the road. We did part of our trip with a Series 1 pickup.
Yep.
So we definitely saw some series vehicles on the road, but there were, we stopped at several Land Rover shops, and, there's a number of, enthusiasts of all the series vehicles. And certainly there's an active enthusiast group there that they're driving their cars for sure.
Just enjoying them. And what about a brand new Defender game viewer?
This is the first one of those I've seen. We didn't see any new Defender game viewers. I had seen a picture of another one, but this conversion that we've looked at here, that's the first one that I've really seen good photographs of.
That's really interesting. Yeah,
That's
I wonder.
The Ambani family transforms Land Rover into a safari vehicle.
I wonder if, eventually, certainly those 300 TDI vehicles will eventually time out. I would think the TD5s, the Pumas have got many years before they need to be replaced. But I guess at some point, you would think that there's going to be a need for a new vehicle. But do you think they're going to stick with Land Rover at the end of the day when Toyota and companies like that are making a little bit more practical convertible vehicle? I don't know.
Certainly, we saw a number of newer Toyotas that were converted to game viewers, brand new Hiluxes and Lands that were converted into game viewers, but also, Mitsubishis and Kias and Cherries and everything else is,
Cherry.
Everybody's got their own preference for their vehicle type. So they just pay one of these conversion companies to make it into a game viewer, and they chop the top off and throw it away, and they often make a folding windshield. So a lot of the newer cars don't have folding windshields, so they'll actually make brackets and connect them, and they'll paint it all. I mean, they're pretty nicely finished conversions.
Yeah. Wow. That's crazy. I would love, I mean, again, no one has room for that, but I would love a game viewer. I think that'd be so much fun to be able to just drive around town and look at Christmas lights, do whatever, like it'd be super fun. I have a feeling those are highly illegal here in North America, but hey, why not? Just throw some stadium seats up there,
If you can drive a Model A Ford, with no safety features and a 5,000 horsepower motor on the street, I have no reason to believe.
Yeah, there's no reason to think,
Drive
if it's here, do whatever you want,
One thing that we found out is that the game viewers have special privileges for driving in some of the parks there.
Oh.
So some of the national parks, they don't allow you to have the sides of the vehicle rolled up. So we had a 110 3-door soft top in our group.
Yes.
And we attempted to take it out on a game drive with the sides rolled up and people in the back. And they were like, no, you can't do that, because the reasoning was maybe the animals would attack the people in the back of the car. But if you're a guide and you're driving a game viewer, you can have people in the back of the car that are exposed like that, as long as you have a firearm to protect the occupants.
Or is it to put the occupant out of their misery while they're being eaten by a lion? Okay. No, either way, Speaking of putting people out of their misery, as it turns out, the subscription model offered by our good friends at Jaguar Land Rover has become increasingly popular amongst the young people, as they
talk about
as they
this
say.
Subscription model. I've always, when I'm paying for something, appreciated owning the thing. But tell us about this.
Well, so basically what it is, like you subscribe to cable or anything else, you pay a monthly fee, and it is all inclusive. So the car, the maintenance, the insurance, basically any cost associated with the vehicle is all included in that monthly price of the vehicle. It's something like, maybe a Hertz has offered up to this point, but only on a sort of weekly basis. This is a much more long-term sort of situation. So you are not responsible for anything, just your monthly payment. And once you have made that monthly payment, then you can go ahead and use the vehicle to your liking. And once you decide you don't want that vehicle anymore or anything like that, no questions asked, I guess. You just send it back to JLR. And if you'd like a different one, they'll send you a different one. So there's a world in which you could have a different car every 6 months if you wanted to, I suppose. I'm not exactly sure what the turnaround policy is, but the idea here is that, I guess, you don't want to deal with any of the additional hassle of owning an automobile. You simply want an easy one-time per month payment that covers everything that might need to be covered for that car.
How's this different than a lease?
I guess I don't really know. I suppose with a lease, you have to have your own insurance and potentially you're paying for maintenance. At least you have some kind of maintenance package or something included. And a lease is going to be for a set time period, right? You're going to have a 24, 48, whatever month lease, and 36 months. You're going to then take that car back, and maybe there's a residual that you could buy it out or something like that. In this case, none of that. This is simply you're renting a car, basically, I guess, right? I mean, you really are. You're renting a car. That's subscribing to it is just another way to say renting it.
Well, I've always said the most capable vehicle is a rental.
So if you want to do some significant off-roading with your Defender, go ahead and just subscribe to one.
Yeah.
And it's much like the podcast here, maximum output for little to no input. That's the same idea, So speaking of maximum output for little to no input, the last couple weeks, we've had a fantastic cavalcade of guests, hosts here on the show doing their best Ike Goss impression. And the jury is in, and everyone would rather have these people than me. as it turns out.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Not what I expected.
Yeah, you and any other person, basically, is sort of what the survey came back with. So, it's
got to be hard to hear.
Well, it's not entirely unexpected. It does make sense. I mean, if you do the math. But we had...
Ever since that video came out of you kicking that puppy on TikTok.
That's true. I mean, it deserved
your approval ratings.
What you didn't see is
declined.
the precursor to that. I mean, that puppy said some shit that just...
It's out of context.
It was, taken out of context. I mean, it's totally warranted if you
puppy
had just seen the whole video. But, it was great. We had Liza on to kick things off and had a great show with her, and obviously recapped a lot of stuff that had been going on in her world, in the world of Octa and Electric Defender and Electric Range Rover and all that sort of stuff. And then moved on to everybody's favorite Land Rover photographer, Mr. Nick Dimbleby.
Nice.
And that's really when we got into the run of all Freelander all the time. So
I'm glad I missed it.
We tried to pack as much Freelander content in while you were away as humanly possible to spare you that, because I know it's your favorite car deep down. But Nick really, man, he's put a lot of effort into his yellow 3-door, and it sounds like quite the unit, really. It's pretty cool.
I mean, for a teenage girl in 2002, that was the one to have.
And to be fair, that is how I describe Nick to people. So, it does make sense. And he's very happy with it. Obviously had a great trip to South Africa, where you just came from, with the Octas.
Everybody doing it.
That's what you do now. Yeah, everybody's still talking about Nick there in South Africa. They're like, that Dimbleby, what a guy. And then, of course, he's on to all things Range Rover, Electric Range Rover going forward, and that will be his year. And then last week, our very good friend, Joe from the Lost Cause Ranch on YouTube, a good friend of the show, good friend, generally speaking, and very entrepreneurial guy. We talked about him building his own workshop basically by himself, and it's a great little space there on the ranch. And then, of course, working through his myriad of Land Rovers, including his 3-door Freelander, which...
What happened with his Nada 109s?
Still sitting there. His brother's runs. His brother's has the Chevy 6-cylinder in it, but his is still there. He had to air hammer out one of the cylinders in it. So, I imagine the block has probably seen better days, but he needs a bunch of internal parts for it. I said, I have an engine here. He could just swap out, but he's gonna do some work. He wants to get to that this year, and also with his Range Rover camper conversion, he wants to come out here to the West Coast. So
I also have a customer that's interested in your spare engine.
No, do you? No. Hey, come
in high demand.
We got engines. I think probably 50% of the Nada 6-cylinder engines are sitting on an engine stand in someone's workshop or storage.
I think that's bold. I think they're sitting on the floor.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. They're in a tire, maybe, if you're lucky. Yeah, it is a, actually mine's on an engine pallet. It's not even on a stand anymore. And yeah, it's actually in the back of my forward control.
You should keep it at Chris's house.
I'm going to, we finally swapped that engine into his Mini, and then another Mini engine showed up.
So you have two Mini engines right now?
No, I just have one, but I always have one.
So it's the one out of his car.
It's the one out of that car, yeah. But I'm going to ship that up to you, so you can have that there at the old Pangolin 4x4. And so, well, with that, I think we'll wrap it up there. But we are going to do a huge Ike in Africa recap.
Yeah,
we're going to have Maddie and we're going to have Jenna. We'll see if we can get a hold of Linus there from his honey badger
colony.
Yeah, the colony that he's now king of, and get him via the Starlink into the show. But yeah, I can't wait, man. So many, just in the brief conversations we've had up to this point, so many insane and colorful things that have happened to you folks while you were there. Yeah,
it was a good time. We met some really fabulous people, saw some really interesting stuff, and we saw so many Land Rovers. So it'll be great.
I can't wait for you to individually recount each Land Rover to us in detail.
Oh, man. It's going to take the rest of the year.
I can't wait. So excited. New segment.
Huge number.
This Land Rover I saw in South Africa once.
Yeah.
With Ike Goss.
Yeah, every one. I saw them all.
Wow, that's fantastic. Well, at that, it's been a slice, and we'll talk to you next week.
See you on the trail.
The Underpowered Hour is produced by Liza Beres, Ike Goss, and me, Steve Beres. Pavel Svardov composed and performed our theme music. Consider supporting the show on Patreon, and if you already do, thank you. Your support makes the show possible. For even more, check out our Instagram or Facebook.